I personally love this trip, going up the Columbia and Snake Rivers, because in just a few hundred miles, we see a huge diversity of climate, vegetation, and landscapes.
Despite the barrenness, it is a place where lots of wildlife thrive. To me, this is one of the most beautiful landscapes we see on this entire trip. This is my favorite, right in here, this day, this river. I love it.
The history in general of the area is so fascinating, to go so far back into the Ice Age and then right up to Lewis and Clark discovering this wonderful world. It is fabulous.
These locks are some of the highest vertical lift locks in the world, upwards of 100 feet.
Not everybody gets to float these rivers. A lot of people drive the roads along the rivers and see it from a highway or a road, but to be on the water going through these locks is a different experience, and it's really interesting and really rewarding.
We're here on the bank of the Snake River, and we just took our jet boats up to where it meets the Salmon River, the longest undammed river in the lower 48 states. And it's the headwaters for the king salmon and the steelhead that are coming upriver. It's where they go to spawn, and the young fish come downstream, and we'll follow their path all the way down to the mouth of the Columbia. This is one of the mightiest salmon rivers in the world, and we're right here near the headwaters.
Hell's Canyon is carved deeper than any other river-carved canyon in North America. It's been wonderful. We've been down to the narrowest part of Hell's Canyon, with spectacular steep walls on either side, and we've been to the mouth of the Salmon River, once known as the River of No Return. Today we're at Multnomah Falls. You can see it behind me, plunging 620 feet over these layers of Columbia River basalts. It is not the highest, but it's one of the highest that runs full time all year long, and part of that reason is because it's fed by springs from the mountain up above.
How the crevices
Multnomah Falls are absolutely beautiful, right here on the Columbia River.
Let's see, I love it's kind of the caldera down there, or whatever that opening area is called. And some of the lichen, which is spectacular, another word, spectacular.
Yeah, these are really beautiful. They're right up with Yosemite Falls. And it looks like it's coming down almost as far. And you can see the water vaporizing as it comes down. Just gorgeous.
We started our morning at Bonneville Lock and Dam. Bonneville is our first of 8 locks that we'll traverse as we go from west to east on the Columbia and Snake Rivers. And then we came off and went to Multnomah Falls, a beautiful 620-foot falls, as well as a little adventure hike over at Horsetail and Ponytail Falls. And then it was off to Hood River Winery, a beautiful vineyard and setting with the Mount Hood at one end and Mount Adams at the other end of our spectacular view. Then we moseyed on through the vineyards and the pear orchards and ended up at the Gorge White House, where we ended up in heaven, filled with dahlias and cosmos and zinnias and sunflowers, and some pear wine tasting as well. So our photo assignment for today was macro photography. Macro photography allows you to access a world that usually goes very much unnoticed, and your most powerful tool for using your macro button are your feet. You're not zooming in, you are walking up and looking at the details firsthand and capturing that image on your camera. so many of our little point and shoot cameras have a little flower button on the back of them that allows us to press that little button and then crawl right into the flowers and find the bees and other bugs or other special little details of our voyage here on the Columbia and Snake Rivers.
We've really enjoyed going through the locks, some at night, some during the day and full daylight. It's been a really interesting operation.
We'll be traveling down the Snake River and the Columbia River, and the reason we can travel is because of the presence of locks in the big dams. These dams were placed strategically so that ships could pass through. They also generate electrical power, so there are multiple functions.
I've never seen locks with the guillotine type doors on them. Just the whole operation of the lock has been really fascinating, tying up the boat to the side and watching it come up.
And so we will transit 8 locks going inland, a total of 465 miles.
We'll be learning about the Lewis and Clark expedition, the Oregon Trail, the fur trappers, the settlers in this area, as well as the modern-day history of dams and locks. Wonderful scenery and tremendous experiences. Welcome aboard.
It's important to take some time and learn about the past so we can better understand where we are now.
Here at Fort Clatsop, the Corps of Discovery arrived on this spot on December 7th, 1805.
We've been following Lewis and Clark intently, almost feeling their hardships, almost feeling their joys.
I get a feeling of their path and what they did.
What they did and how arduous and how tough a journey they had.
It's really awesome being in the lock. We are watching the water go up the wall as we are right on the water level.
One of the best parts of our Columbia and Snake River itinerary is the opportunity to taste the fruits of this incredibly productive region.
It is a world-class art museum.
We've been walking on the very scenic, historic Columbia River Highway, cleaned out and scoured by giant Ice Age floods rushing through here hundreds of feet deep and going 60 miles an hour or more.
This beautiful and modern museum gives us a great insight into the natural and cultural history of this area.
We understand that history matters.
I've been particularly struck by the diversity of the geography. I did not expect to be in a rainforest one day and an arid desert the next.
Palouse Falls plunges 190 feet down over the cliffs that are formed here by the great Ice Age floods.
This is one of the few places we've seen a waterfall that I'd love to dive into. I mean, it's just, we're coming back. That's the big news.
I think we leave this trip having understood a lot about Lewis and Clark expedition and about the other people and places along the Snake and Columbia rivers.
You name it, it's here. It's wonderful.
One of my favorite trips because we go from the rich and dense temperate rainforest all the way up to the high desert of the Western Rockies. The land seems to just open up and welcome us with sunshine and bright grassy plains.
This area here is just absolutely fantastic when it comes to the geology.
Right around this area that I'm standing in right now, we have wild turkeys plus mule deer, and it's just a beautiful day.
One of the best parts of our Columbia and Snake River itinerary is the opportunity to taste the fruits of this incredibly productive region.
This environment is more interesting than I could have imagined it to be. It's such a reminder that places really close to home can be just as stunning as some of the exotic, faraway locations that I've been to with National Geographic and Lundblad.
Well, we started off in the desert in Lewiston. Everything was brown and desolate. But as we got close, particularly by getting off the Zodiacs, you got to see how it really was formed. And then 2 days later, we're in a rainforest. And having seen that contrast, and it occurred overnight. And today we were out in Astoria, and the trees were dripping. This has been a genuinely amazing journey. It was short in the sense that it was 6 days, but we covered 400 and almost 500 miles, and we saw deserts and rainforests and everything in between, went through 6 locks, learned an awful lot about the history of the region and the river. It's been terrific.